Welcome to First Bite, our Detroit Lions midweek preview podcast where we talk about the Lions' upcoming matchup. This week, we're already into week 4, Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. Maybe one of the last games at Soldier Field, question mark? Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. But my name is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the editor-in-chief at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online. With me is my co-host for First Bite, Ryan Matthews, senior editor at Pride of Detroit, at Ryan_POD. How we doing, Ryan?
I am doing fine. How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. Lions are 0-3, right where we thought they'd be, pretty much. But you know what? They've been entertaining along the way, and that's all I could really ask for.
Entertaining football. That's all we want, folks.
Well, that's all we want this year.
For now.
Speaking of entertaining for entirely different reasons, Chicago Bears are the Lions' Week 4 opponent, and to help us preview that team, we've got our one of the oldest friends of the podcast, not in terms of age, but in terms of how long he goes back to. Really, probably the original. What is that? 6 years ago now, Ryan?
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't even have I don't have enough fingers on one hand.
Well, he is an assistant editor over at Windy City Gridiron, the SB Nation hub for the Chicago Bears. Robert Zeglinski is here at Robert Zeglinski on Twitter. Rob, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. Better than the Bears, but
Low bar.
not a high bar, but
Yep.
I'm well.
That's good to hear. Well, let's jump right into this because I think you and I have, and really everyone here on the podcast have had kind of a Schadenfreude relationship with each other with the Lions and Bears. We like to tease each other a little bit, and while the Lions have the worst record here, I think Bears fans are having a tougher time right now, and a lot of it has to do with that offense. So we're going to start with the offense here. First, let's just start with Matt Nagy and everything. Where are you at with the coaching staff here, the GM? Are you ready to turn a new leaf here, or are you willing to kind of sit this out and see how it plays out in this fourth year of this regime?
Fourth year of the regime. Yeah. I mean, at this point, I'm done. At this point, I would like to see the Bears move on. I think there's certainly been enough of a sample size to say, okay, this isn't working. There's no meaningful progress. They're leaning too much on a defense that year by year can carry less and less of the load. And, barring some kind of incredible meteorite like performance from Justin Fields in the next 3 months where he's like throwing for 300 yards every week and he goes on to Offensive Rookie of the Year, I mean, there's really nothing that can change it. I mean, you have a coach and you have an offensive staff that's signed off on the game plan. I was talking about this with you in the pre-show, Jeremy, where you let Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney tee off on Fields with empty set after empty set after empty set. Nagy talked a lot about in the preseason how he didn't want Fields to become that half-read player, how he didn't want him to just be running RPOs because he's not that kind of quarterback. He can rely on his legs, but he's a pocket passer first. He's an accurate passer first. He wants him to learn all of that. He wants him to eventually become an empty set passer. But to do that in his first start on the road with a guy, again, that was fishing 6 weeks ago on a lake, who was not in football shape, and Jason Peters, 40 years old, almost 40, and Jermaine Ifedi as your tackles, no chip, no help, and to do that 30-plus times, I mean, where is the logic? Where's any of that built in? I mean, if anything's going to change, how does that game tell you that it will? So
Be that as you will, right? But I think for as much talk as there was, and I guess we have to have this discussion again, because leading up to this week, who knows who it's going to be at quarterback for Chicago Bears? Is it going to be Andy Dalton? Is it going to be Justin Fields? Why does this question persist, Rob?
I think Nagy and I know Jeremy had mentioned this, but also where he's a little bit of an egomaniac, and I'm understating that. And I know Lions fans are very familiar with egomaniacs as head coaches. So he thinks withholding that information is somehow going to give them a competitive advantage over the Lions, as if there's a meaningful difference in practice prep, as if they can't prepare for Andy Dalton throwing 3 yards short of the sticks on 3rd down, as if they can't prepare to tee off on Fields if Nagy has a similar game plan. So he legitimately thinks it gives them a competitive advantage. He legitimately thinks it tilts things in their favor to keep from announcing the starter as long as possible.
You're really pulling a B rabbit right now, where you're just insulting yourself before we can even get to it, and it's kind of frustrating. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I mean, there's not. I'm not, because I'm at peace with it. Like, yeah. I'm not necessarily angry about it. Like, there's I know the POD folks love the Schadenfreude, but okay, I agree with you. I am watching the third coach and as many coaches that runs wide receiver screens on 3rd and 1 backwards. I'm watching the same coach who, again, is a mastermind. It talks about how great all practices are, and then none of it ever transfers over to the field. I'm sure he has a PDF somewhere of Andy Reid's Chiefs playbook, but I've never seen it on the field. So I'm at peace with it. I think I used to be like, okay, he's young, all right, he's a guy that's figuring it out. Like, now it's get out of here before you ruin the first real quarterback they've ever drafted, So.
Yeah. Well, am I safe to assume that all this quarterback, not Justin Fields, is going to start, right? It's the only move that I think makes
Fields
sense.
will start against the Lions, but see, the thing to go back to Ryan, if I would think that if Andy Dalton's bone bruise heals up well enough, Fields could legitimately throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns this Sunday. And if Andy Dalton's healthy enough, he'll put him back in against Vegas. So,
all right.
You tell me.
I want to go back to.
You tell me the logic in that.
Yeah, there isn't, and I said this to you off air. It really seems like you're where Lions fans were last year. You've got a stubborn head coach, and everyone is done with him. Everyone sees kind of the writing on the wall. Nothing's going to change in this final year. I'm already referring to it as a final year for Matt Nagy because I feel like that's where just everyone else is at in Chicago. But let me go back to last week because when I see 8 or 9 sacks or whatever it was, my mind doesn't immediately go to the offensive line. And maybe I'm incorrect in this, but at some point when you're getting sacked that many times, there's got to be at least a little bit of onus on the quarterback. And I'm not saying Justin Fields is a bad quarterback or anything. He's a rookie. Rookies go through this, but would it be accurate to say that Justin Fields deserves at least a little bit of blame there?
Absolutely. I mean, he coming out, he had a little bit of a propensity to hold the ball too long on plays, as a lot of rookies do. Sure. And even in review, there were definitely some NFL window throws that he missed, a hot read that he could have made, but instead the pressure got to him and he completely overlooked it. But, it could have been 3 or 4 or 5 sacks. It could have been 20% less pressure. It could have been a disastrous pick or two, which is what I expected. I didn't expect the Bears to just let him sit back and let the Browns pad up their stats and essentially give Myles Garrett an early lead for Defensive Player of the Year. I didn't expect that. Fields absolutely was at blame, but there was no sort of protection. There was seemingly no one in his ear. There was seemingly no one on his side. Okay, let's ease him in. Let's get him into a bit of a rhythm. Let's see where things go and try to make things easy on him because we know he's eventually going to make a mistake. We know he's going to press, but let's minimize those. There was none of that. He absolutely could have been better, but they didn't really give him a chance to do that either.
And you know what? We haven't given you a chance to talk about anything that you like about the Chicago Bears yet, Rob. And I know in theory, Justin Fields is something to be excited about because he is, as you mentioned, one of the first real quarterbacks that the Bears have drafted that Bears fans can get around and they can be optimistic about and they can rally around that. Is there anything on this football team that brings you joy? Because that's something that really lacked for me in Lions of yesteryear. Under the Matt Patricia era, like it was tough to get up for Detroit Lions football. Like, is there something that you can get up for with Chicago Bears football?
I mean, David Montgomery, if we're going to stick with on offense, certainly looks like he's turned himself into a multi-level threat, a Matt Forte kind of guy. Has a little bit more of juice this year, noticeable juice through 3 games. If he was in a better offense, if you had a more experienced quarterback and a better coordinator, he would be lighting it up. But he's still having a decent start, and it looks like there's genuine explosiveness there. I like Roquan Smith, obviously, as anyone will do. The new defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, is asking a lot out of him. I think at least a second-team All-Pro should be in question, should be up in the market, given all the responsibility he has. Jalen Johnson looks like a number 1 cornerback. I mean, it's the Bears, so the nihilistic part always comes from the offense, and then you look at the defense and you're like, okay, maybe they can hold them to 21 points today and we eke out some weird special teams touchdown. But it's defense. It's always the defense. Jalen Johnson, Roquan Smith, I guess Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack waking up. Really, at this point, those are the very minimal positives. I wish I could say more on offense aside from Montgomery, but when receivers only see 6 total pass attempts that can actually go forward past the line of scrimmage, how am I evaluating that?
That's fair. I want to talk more about the offense and that offensive line because like you said, like it does seem like the Bears are getting the run game going a little bit, but pass protection seems to be a pretty big issue. Your best offensive lineman is probably Jason Peters, who you mentioned was fishing a month and a half ago.
It is Peters. It's absolutely Peters. And that's as sad as it sounds. Go on.
So how well, first off, how is the running game still working? Is it just the running back breaking every single tackler, or are these guys just better run blockers than they are pass protectors?
They're better run blockers. I mean, Jason Peters, even at 39, still can be a little bit of a road grader. He is a terrible back pedal, and anyone with a semblance of speed is going to beat him in pass protection, but he still has a little bit of beef. The Bears are running a lot. They're running very well off left side, right off of his hip. Jermaine Effect, aside from being clowned by Clowney, pun not intended, has also been very good in that respect. So they've been doing very well off tackle. I don't know that I would say that they're necessarily going to try to establish the run as much as it's been successful in the limited attempts that they use it. So, but yeah, this offensive line, it's not the best. I'd consider it a bottom 3rd unit, but they're at least competent enough to give Montgomery a chance at making someone of the second level miss.
Do you think that's, I mean, I guess I can't ask you to predict what Matt Nagy will do because he's going to do what he's going to do. But in terms of like game planning, does it make sense for that to be the game plan? Is just establish the run, like don't be this team that drops back and throws and actually gives the rock to David Montgomery? Is that what you expect them? First off, is that what you would do? Second off, is that what you expect them to do on Sunday?
That is what I would do, because to, again, trot out that same plan that lets Fields get hit 20 times would be malpractice, even more so than the first time. But letting Montgomery go and giving him 20 plus touches, that's running and receiving, that's going to be the main way you can protect Fields. If Nagy wants, I mentioned earlier, if he wants him to not develop bad habits around being an RPO guy or being a quarterback he thinks he isn't, which I actually agree with him that, yes, Fields is not that kind of player, then you let Montgomery establish the ground game. You let Montgomery give him a semblance of comfort, and then you run those empty set plays every now and then. You run those pocket plays, and you take advantage of what I know is a very vulnerable defense. If you want to go and give Fields 40 attempts and pass on first down, I don't know that that'll even work against the Lions defense, and I suspect that Nagy might do it again. That's just the nature of the beast. It's
an interesting matchup, right, Ryan? Like, because I do feel like the Lions are certainly vulnerable on the back end, as we saw with Lamar Jackson. The Lions challenged Lamar Jackson to beat him with his arm, and he did, not by a lot, but he did. but the Lions also have a pretty good pass rush, as we saw last week. And the run defense is kind of still a work in the progress, but they did pretty good last week against Baltimore. So I don't know how this matchup is going to go at all on Sunday, because part of me thinks like rookie quarterbacks tend to be this franchise's kryptonite, and Matt Nagy's, I don't know, he hasn't shown it before, but you have to imagine Sunday was some sort of a wake up call for somebody in that building, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so. It was it's something that everybody is still talking about, and it's Wednesday. You know what I mean? I think I every time I go on Twitter, I'm seeing a different former offensive lineman say, no, this is what happened to the Bears offensive line. And then it's like, no, I see another offensive lineman who's saying, no, this is actually what happened. Or really, it just boils down to like, it's all bad. How much has missing out on Tevin Jenkins thrown a wrench in everything, Robert, in terms of their offensive line plan?
I mean, that was their plan. So it essentially blew everything up. They cut Charles Leno, who I was never a special fan of. I didn't think he was a remarkable player, but he was steady-ish, didn't miss a game, with the expectation that Jenkins would step in, be the franchise tackle, perhaps, again, have a little bit of his own rookie beats, especially when going against other great pass rushers, but otherwise be a stabilizing force, and then hope that a guy like Jermaine Ifedi is a stopgap at right tackle. Well, Jenkins has a back injury. We don't know when we'll see him. And now you're going with a guy that probably should have retired 3 years ago, who I keep saying the fishing on the lake story, but that is actually what happened. Jason Peters, in his introductory press conference, said that he was fishing on some random lake, I don't know where he lives, and he got a call from the Bears. 39-year-old Jason Peters, who I would imagine was probably not doing much of any like explosive football workouts like he would before, in the expectation of playing a season. That's their guy at left tackle with Jenkins injured. And the other guy that they really like, who I kind of see the upside in, Larry Borum, is also hurt. The guy that might be their future right tackle, the guy they drafted in the 5th round out of Missouri. He's also currently on injured reserve, and there's not with an ankle injury. There's not necessarily a timetable on that. So they don't really have a plan. Jenkins was the plan, and I don't even know if we'll see him this year. I don't think it would be smart to push out a guy that is supposed to be the blindside protector for Fields with a back injury, a 320-pound man. But we'll see. That was their plan.
All right, so the Bears offense humming along nicely. Let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk about their defense. This is the same Bears team we've seen for the past 10, 20 years. Bad offense, but a really good defense, and we'll get into that defense when we come back here on First Bite. All right, let me address our live audience here for a minute here, because we got, what do we get? We got our good friend Harry drop in a sub, 20 months total. Then Joshua Mercer dropped his 10 gifted subs, which was owed after, what was our bet last week? Lamar Jackson getting over 50 rushing yards. Just barely lost out on that bet. Nick the Greek then with 100 bits says Matt Nagy appointed himself as the next permanent host of Jeopardy. I could see it.
He would never give a straight answer. The host needs to be someone that can give a straight answer.
That's true.
That's terrible.
His
That's
job
terrible
is literally giving answers.
He has none.
He has none. He has no answers. Joshua Mercer he's posted another 10 gifted sub bet. He says, bet Okwara gets at least 2 sacks. Want to take that, Jeremy? Well, first of all, I feel like I have to close a loophole here, because when you say Okwara, there's 2 of them, and I will not give you both Okwaras for 2 sacks. So you have to specify first which one. I imagine you meant Romeo, but I need it in written form here so that you don't loophole me. But otherwise, yeah, sure, I'll take. Does
he line up primarily off the left or right side?
Off the right side.
Defense, I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Over the left tackle.
Okay. I mean, that's probably a worse matchup. It doesn't really matter, but sure, he could probably get 2 sacks off Peters.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, goodness gracious. I just don't know how. I don't know how you don't have a plan, like a plan B, when you draft Tevin Jenkins and you know he's got the back thing.
Apparently, they knew he had a back injury.
Right. So, like,
but
he has
weren't very
it, but,
concerned
like,
with it.
Why no plan B?
And then he had a re-aggravation.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Ryan Pace era, year 7.
So when I first, a lot of times when I first start my research on my scouting report, I just look at the PFF grades of the starting lineup, and I see Justin Peters 75.7. He's the number 8 tackle according to PFF. But then I look over to the defense and I see Roquan Smith with a 49.7 grade, and I'm like, I can't trust any of this. Roquan Smith is a dude.
Roquan Smith is their best player. Roquan Smith is like doing everything right now. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. PFF asks the difficult questions like who's more valuable, Myles Garrett or Golden Tate?
I can't believe. So I don't know.
Was that a real query? Was that a real query?
That was a real topic of conversation last year during the off season on one of their podcasts. And I guess, like, amongst a lot of NFL people, it's become a meme and something that people always joke about. I didn't know about it until this week when Ryan showed me the clip, which was just unbelievable.
Spoiler alert.
We're talking Giants era Golden Tate, right?
Yeah.
Like not even like good Lions, like not even like good line receiver. We're talking like Giants, probably washed, right?
Yes, and the conclusion that they arrive at is like wide receivers are more valuable than edge rushers because edge rushers are less valuable than coverage players.
I agree with the latter, but I don't know that I agree with the former. Like, goodness gracious.
Like, just because apparently like all of the cascading effects that having a Golden Tate on your team, it's hard to wrap my brain around it, but like Jeremy put it best, like when you say something like in the clip they're talking and they're like, this seems counterintuitive, but it's like, no, like sometimes when you say like it seems counterintuitive, it is counterintuitive. like watching what Myles Garrett, how he glitched across the offensive line and like the one step that he took to beat that lineman, like, oh my gosh. He might be the best defensive player in football.
Yeah, I just like I would definitely rather have the 35 catch slot receiver over the defensive player of the year, the probable defensive player of the year in his prime. I mean that's just me though. Brian.
And to like say that a wide receiver has a cascading effect, like it opens up other things, it makes your quarterback better, whatever. Like you don't think having a transformative defensive end does the same for everyone else on the defensive line?
Yeah. Hey, speaking of edge. Exactly. Hey, edge players. Rob, has the Chicago Bears defense improved since they got Khalil Mack?
Yes, it has.
And
convincingly so.
Listen, PFF has done interesting research on the topic of coverage being more important than pass rush. And they put forth a compelling argument. But I feel like they've made that way too big of a part of their...
too far.
Yeah, it's like an integral part of their brand now, and I think it's still a topic that's up for debate. I don't think it's been solved, and I think there's valid arguments to either. And I think the main point here is that like both are still pretty damn valuable, right? Getting a pass rusher is important. If you don't have a pass rusher, your cornerbacks are probably going to look like shit. If you don't have good cornerbacks, sometimes a good pass rush isn't going to matter. And so like, why can't there be a middle ground here and not just be like lean so hard into one side? It's I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little guilty of it too, right? Like my whole thing with drafting running backs thing. Like I probably take that to an extreme a little bit. But
I mean, that's kind of like, okay, yes. I think most people take that to an extreme, but there's a lot of talented backs. I don't know that any of them are like I think that part has probably been solidified in most circles. There's a lot of talented backs, and it's as unfortunate as it is. Like, I mean, David Montgomery, he's very good. I don't know that I want the Bears to pay him when they can find another guy that can get 1,200, 1,300 yards rushing easily. That's just going to be the nature of it. Do I want to pay him 15, 16, 17 million dollars, take up cap space? Like, his contract's coming up, and that's going to be a question.
When's the earliest that you would draft a running back if you were a general manager?
Late second. Okay. I mean, honestly, I feel like I think because at this point everybody waits to draft back.
Almost.
So the best ones that you would normally find near the top will fall towards that later day too.
I'll allow that answer. I think I don't even remember where I've planted my flag. I think it's just first 2 rounds, right? Is that what I say, Ryan? I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, it sounds about right. But I think it's all situational too.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing. Like, there shouldn't be any sort of like universal rule with a lot of these things. And I joke about it a lot. But I will say that like the Lions, it's not just that the Lions drafted running backs in the second round. In one instance, they traded up. The other instance, I think, was at the top of the second round recently. Yeah. And like, listen, it's a high injury position. It's I think one of the more easily replaceable ones.
It is the most. Not hyperbole. I think it's definitely the most replaceable.
Yeah. So
it's also one of those positions where like every year it seems like it's becoming more of a trend to just be
committee
RBBC.
Yeah.
It almost just has to be like yes, the Lions had DeAndre Swift, but they had to go out and they had to get Jamal Williams for everybody to be like, okay, like this could be a good running back group. I mean, you look around the league all over the place, and don't tell me the Saints aren't hurting a little bit because all they have is Alvin Kamara.
Yeah. There is a definitely.
I mean, do you think the Chiefs like Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now? They used a first-round pick on him. Do you think they like him right now? Do you think they couldn't have used, let's say, an off-ball linebacker?
Not after that Ravens game.
Not after last week, too. He had another fumble.
Yeah.
He had another fumble at the Chargers. Was he worth pick number 32 as opposed to a defense that like lets everybody cut them up? And that maybe another. I don't know what else was available, but maybe they could have gotten a coverage linebacker instead.
It's just wild because we are not so far removed from Leonard Fournette being a top 5 pick in the NFL draft.
It's true.
What was that? 2017, right?
Sounds right.
Yeah, I think you should remember that draft pretty well.
I don't actually, weirdly enough. I think Myles Garrett went 1, and then the Niners picked Solomon Thomas at number 2, and then it's just like it cascades from there.
All right, before
hold on, because I don't even know like to acknowledge the gigantic, embarrassing elephant in the room. Like I don't even like. I love Matt Nagy because now I question myself. Was Mitchell Trubisky actually a little better because Matt Nagy was coaching him? And I have to like slap myself and hit myself in the face multiple times. Like, no, you idiot. He was still terrible. He just was a little like. I love that Matt Nagy that Matt Nagy being so terrible leads me to that thought process, that fleeting thought that where I save myself still, but it's there.
During one of the preseason games this season, Justin Fields in the first half of one of those games started out with a very Mitchell Trubisky type of box score, and I tweeted out something like that, very much tongue in cheek, like maybe Mitchell Trubisky wasn't the problem. And of course, somehow it made it into Bears Twitter. And it's, of course, in the second half, Justin Fields fucking lights everything up. And I'm just like, for the next 48 hours, Bears fans are in my mentions going, this aged well, at Old Takes Exposed, this aged well. It's just like, well, should I go back and this aged well to all those guys now?
Well. Isn't it the consequences of my own actions?
You guys know at this point that that poking the hornet's nest of the Bears the Bears quarterback room, that's what that is. So like this entire fan base has put all of their eggs in his basket. So Jeremy, that's a completely expected response.
Oh,
Like they're gonna like they hung on to Trubisky probably 2 years, 2 years too late. They still there was still an insistence that this was going to work out. Even after 10-3 opening games against the Packers. Like so, Fields at this point will like even if I think he's going to work out, but even if he doesn't, it'll be 15 years before anyone like lets him go. So
there was no point at the draft on draft day where you're like, oh dear Lord, we just traded up for a quarterback. It's going to happen again.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you obviously.
I'm not a person on Bears Twitter. I'm legitimately confused by your question.
No, I'm just saying like there wasn't any sense of deja vu for you when on draft night they traded up to get a quarterback. You weren't just like, oh, this is risky. I don't know if I trust.
I mean, if they had taken like
Ryan Pace,
McCorkle Jones, then sure.
Okay.
But they took one of, in my opinion, the greatest college quarterbacks ever, a guy tailor-made for the NFL.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, holy shit. Like, I'm not messing around. Now, bear in mind that is the cost of entry for a lousy team to trade up and actually get a quarterback in 2021. But they got a good one. So I wasn't even really thinking about it. I wasn't really even thinking about it. I really was afraid that Ryan Pace and the Bears would have taken Jones, but thankfully they did not.
That's fair.
I think maybe one of the most surprising developments so far of 2021 is the quarterback class being kind of bad to start. Like none of them are having like good starts. You know what I mean? Like there's nobody who's like lighting the world on fire, like Justin Herbert from a year ago, or not even like none of those guys. Like Zach Wilson is having an atrocious season. Like Trevor Lawrence is struggling.
It's interesting you say that because Jared Goff kind of talked about that a lot today.
Yeah.
And he said, and I think he's kind of right. He's like, this always kind of happens. Like Patrick Mahomes ruined this narrative. And now everyone thinks they're going to get a quarterback that's just going to be great right out of the box. And I mean, even with Mahomes, like he wasn't in right away. He had to sit behind a quarterback for a while. And let me see if I can pull up the actual quote here. Oh, there we go. Jared Goff. Says we do this every year where these kids get drafted in the top 10 and we expect them to be the best player in the league right away. It's rare. I think you look around the league, how many guys have done that in the last 20 years? I don't know, one or two. Mahomes may have ruined it for all these guys being as good as he was in year two, but it's a tough game. It's different than in college almost. It's a different game. It's tough, and I remember my transition was hard, and you're learning a lot, and you're learning on the fly. And I remember they always ask you, "Are you ready to play? Are you ready to play?" No, you're never ready as a rookie. Never are until you go out there and do it. And then he goes on, but I think he's kind of right. Like I don't know, like Kyler Murray, I guess was pretty good out of the box, but even then, I don't know.
Yeah, was he? I don't even think Murray. I think Murray was I think threw like 16 picks as a rookie. I mean, he was explosive, but like there was still like that rookie shine on him too. He wasn't like Goff said, he wasn't Mahomes lighting it up his first year as a starter.
Yeah, I think it just is due in part to, like you say, Jeremy, those expectations, but there was something just being made about this quarterback class. It's just like, is this the best quarterback class of all time?
Right.
And it's like, yeah.
Rookies
have to learn.
What I will say is that I do think it's easier than ever to play quarterback, as hard of a position as it is.
Yeah.
Then compare it to any other era. It is easier to pick up. There is more of an advantage. The defense obviously has, I mean, even has the officiating against them. So the rules are in your favor. A lot of these coaches, not Matt Nagy, adapt their college offensive schemes and kind of morph around that.
Right.
So, it is a little bit of surprise that all five guys are struggling. But I wouldn't anticipate it lasting for all five of them.
Right.
I do think we're going to see some like maybe not Mahomes level, but we're going to see some good jumps at least next year. We're going to see some good, like, okay, this is what we thought we were getting.
And I mean, you also always have to consider the teams that are getting these young guys, right? Like, most of them suck. Because that's why they were picking in the top 10 or top 5 or whatever. Because they sucked. Like, maybe the 49ers are the one, exclusion there, but they haven't really run their guy out there at all, so.
I mean, Fields went to the one team that could fail him, so. But yeah.
What
is that? Spirit Halloween, Soldier Field? Yeah.
I don't even know what that is.
It was Soldier Field with a Spirit Halloween banner on it.
As in, like, that's what it's going to get turned into? Is that the joke?
Any big complex gets turned into a Halloween store.
Any big complex without a use.
Did I ruin the joke by explaining it?
Kind of.
Ah, my bad.
Actually, I found it to be funnier.
Okay. By the way, Brett Whitefield in the chat. What's up, Brett?
What
Good
up?
to see you there, buddy.
What up? You want to get into segment dose?
Yeah, we should. Oh, John's here too. What's up, Bearded Blevins? Oh, you got a question before we go to break? All right, hit us quick. What you got? What are you two guys talking about? Lance has scored 100% of his red zone trips. It's true.
I stand corrected.
I mean, he's probably going to be the one. If someone has a Mahomes level jump, it'll probably be him.
You think he takes
that
over?
Offensive line.
Do you think he takes over at some point this year?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I meant more in like that 2022 would be like, okay, where he's like looks like a star. Like he's probably going to be more functional and more better protected but November.
I'm going to say that if the 49ers make the playoffs, he will be their starting quarterback in the playoffs.
Very, very much like a Kaepernick season, huh?
Hope he goes all the way too.
John asks, if you ever won $2,500 for free one year, would you stop trying to win the next year? I feel like that question is very much directed at me and very much referring to something very specific, and I will not answer it. LJ, thank you for gifting Brett Whitefield the sub. Appreciate that. Enjoy your ad-free experience, Brett. By the way, before we get back into it, not only are we 11 subs away from our 400 goal, but this is our final stream of September, which is the final couple days of the month in which you can get a subscription to this channel for 20% off. So a normal $5 sub is $4. If you wanted to gift subs, it would only cost the price of gifting 4 subs to gift 5 subs. But as always, if you have Twitch Prime, if you have Amazon Prime, you can link it to your Twitch account and sub for free, but you can only do that on one channel per month. So make sure you use it if you have Amazon Prime, because we don't need Jeff Bezos getting any more rich. But
yeah, for real.
Yeah. That's all I got. By the way, John, I'm a little freaked out that you guys are tracking how much I play Super Squares. Or, to put in another way, how much I'm not playing Super Squares. You're tracking my data. It's making me uncomfortable. Whoa.
Quit
Hold
putting
on
your
a
data
second.
out there. What happened?
Chris Shepard just subscribed to the channel for 12 months in advance. A full year of... I wasn't even aware you could do that. That's kind of awesome. And you'll have to tell me, Chris. I don't know if you can get all 12 of those months at the 20% discounted rate, but if you can, well done, sir. Way to beat the system. All right. Appreciate it.
Rock.
That's very generous of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oops. Why is that on the screen? Oops. Okay. I think only 1 month is discounted. Either way, we appreciate it.
There goes Bezos.
And we are back here on First Bite with Robert Zeglinski of Windy City Gridiron, previewing the Lions, Bears matchup here in Week 4. We talked gleefully so about the Bears offense. Let's switch over to the defense. It seems like it's kind of more of the same, Robert. But the one question I do have, because it's something that interested me this offseason, is kind of this mass exodus of coaches. Obviously Pagano retires. That has nothing to do with, I don't know, him not liking it there. But then you see, the linebackers coach, he comes to Detroit in Mark DeLeon. Ted Monachino, the outside linebacker coach, he leaves, takes an outside linebackers coach job. A bunch of these guys seem to take lateral moves. And is that the Bears moving on from them, or them moving on from the Bears? And to add on to that, is there any difference on the field? Because it doesn't seem like it seems like maybe I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill here.
I mean, I think those guys leaving, I think you also missed Jay Rogers, who, correct me if I'm wrong, is the defensive coordinator with the Chargers, right?
He's the outside linebackers coach for the Chargers now. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, those guys left to me primarily, and I would never be one to defend the Bears for anything that they don't deserve, but seriously, because Sean Desai, a former quality control coach, a former safeties and defensive backs coach, is the one that eventually got the defensive coordinator role. So someone that, it's a basic principle of where someone that was their subordinate, or someone that was their that might have been their colleague or on a lesser level got promoted above them. So why stay here?
No room for growth.
And it's kind of with the Bears where they weren't necessarily inkling to keep any of them aside from Desai. I think Desai is a guy that's almost been with them for the better part of a decade, is kind of one of the real bright spots on staff, and they more or less moved a mountain around to make him the new coordinator. If that meant everybody else leaving and taking other jobs that weren't really that didn't really have upward mobility, so be it.
Well, and looking at the Bears games so far this year, Rob, the game that obviously stands out is the Cincinnati game, right? I mean, 3 picks and as many pass attempts for Joe Burrow, and yeah, impressive. And that's the game where the Bears were able to scrape together a victory because they won the turnover battle 4-0. So, is it going to take turnovers for this Bears defense to keep their offense afloat? And we talked about it a little bit in the first segment, but the run game plays off the defense, and the defense stands to benefit from that. Is the defense going to be the reason why the Bears win a lot of their football games this year?
Yes, they will be, but I don't know necessarily that they need. I mean, it'll be better if they create turnovers. It'll be better if you have Jalen Johnson getting picks and you have Roquan Smith taking pick sixes back as much as possible. But that's just not a realistic. That's not
sustainable,
a realistic
right?
measure.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. And as much as I like them, this is the first year of a new coordinator who kind of is running similar schemes to Vic Fangio and Chuck Pagano, but it's still his system. It's still kind of his vision. There are some weak spots. So while they're a good defense, to me, they're a little bit more complementary than like the main facet of on a normal healthy franchise's constraints. They're more complementary. Now the Bears obviously are not a healthy franchise, so they are the main facet of the team. I could see it though being a scenario here over the next 3 months where any of the lesser teams they play, they allow 17, 20 points, which is, I suppose, good in 2021. They get a pick or two off of a bad quarterback, and that's enough for Justin Fields to maybe eke out a win, because they're not going to win many games, first of all. But they're certainly disciplined enough. They certainly they have a star at every level, in my opinion, and that puts them in a better position than most.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those individuals because, on the surface, I think the main players are starting to get up there in age. Khalil Mack, even Eddie Jackson. Well, not really Eddie Jackson, but I guess the point is it seems like there's actually a pretty good balance of age. You've got, like you mentioned, Jalen Johnson's having a heck of a year and seems like he's a number one corner. But on the other end, you've got Kindle Vildor. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's
Greatest name ever.
It's a pretty solid name. I'm not gonna lie. How's he been playing, and some of the other kind of younger plug and play guys that are on this defense? What are your early thoughts on them?
Vildor had a little bit of a rough finish against Jamar Chase with Cincinnati, but for the most part, I've been pretty surprised by it. I've been pretty pleasantly surprised by him. He's been a very solid second cornerback. Anytime you let someone go like Kyle Fuller, a guy who's a former first team All Pro, maybe the best corner they've had since Charles Tillman, while he still has a few prime years left, it's not going to go over well. I think most people that were tangential to the Bears expected Vildor to be a liability, to be someone that they could pick on, and you could easily avoid Johnson even as he shadows other receivers. But that hasn't really been the case. He's a good press cover corner. Has a little bit of heart. I hate to pound on those cliches, but he's been pretty physical. He's someone that you can actively rely on and run defense, which I know is a main tenet for corners, whether they actually have long-term staying power. And I don't know, off of these 3 games, if you want to roll with, I'm confident in saying, knowing the Bears doesn't blow up in my face this week, but I'm confident in saying that they have a long-term cornerback deal, and it's probably in the long run, it might be better than the one they had in 2018 with Fuller and Prince Amukamara. At this pace, the way it's going, Vildor is a first-year starter, and Johnson is blossoming into a star. They might have a better corner duo than they had with their historic defense from a few seasons ago.
And, in between segments, we were talking about Pro Football Focus and kind of the information that they put out there in terms of prioritizing pass coverage over a pass rush. But this Bears defense, I feel like, stands to benefit, the back end does, from that pass rush. We're talking Khalil Mack, we're talking Akeem Hicks, we're talking Robert Quinn. How much do you view that relationship to be symbiotic between those pass rushers and the younger players in the defensive backfield?
I think it means everything to this defense, because Quinn last year, everybody was looking at him as a free agent bust, and based off of his first 3 games, he had a bit of a foot injury that he was dealing with. It looks like he has his burst back. He's leading the team in sacks with 4. You have Mack being moved around all over the defense, and you have Hicks essentially dominating the interior of any offensive line as he pleases. If you wanted someone like Johnson to develop, if you wanted someone like Vildor to develop, if you wanted Roquan Smith to be handling essentially the main middle of the field, because the Bears don't really have another reliable off-ball linebacker, so they're often in big nickel, very often in big nickel. You need a trio like that. You need Mack and Hicks and Quinn playing off each other. And this is a place where I would even give credit, where I would give a lot of credit to Sean Desai, because it's a simple thing that I think many coaches would know to do, but on the other side, the offensive guy doesn't do it often enough. He keeps it simple. He moves Mack around. He doesn't let teams chip away. He doesn't let teams get comfortable with Mack always lining up on the offensive left side, or Quinn being somewhere, or he moves them inside. He switches where they are. He gives them an opportunity to tee off and to catch a guard or helpless guard or tackle off balance, and it's paying off.
Probably worth noting that Khalil Mack did not practice today due to a foot injury he suffered on Sunday. But if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, but I believe he returned in that game and played the entire second half on the foot. So
he did. I think he even had a sack, and that's for Mack too. That's essentially been the case where, come mid-season, he's always
taking days off,
limited during the week, and then plays in the game.
Yeah. So I don't think
he's one of those veterans that doesn't.
Probably not much of a concern of him missing this game. I do want to talk about Roquan Smith, because in the break you called him probably the best player on the Bears, and I think he's going to be critical this week. Obviously, he's and I almost said Matt Patricia. I've done that a couple times. Dan Campbell said today, like, he is your ultimate 3-down linebacker type of guy that can play defense, play run defense, drop into coverage. And I have to imagine his dropping into coverage is going to be huge in this game because the Lions have really kind of, relied a lot on DeAndre Swift, relied a lot on TJ Hawkinson. So I'm just curious as to where you think that matchup goes on Sunday, because I think it feels like about 60% of the Lions passing offense right now goes through Hawkinson or Swift.
I don't think the Bears can necessarily afford to have Roquan Smith in man coverage against either, if that's the suggestion. I mean, you might not be saying that. So Roquan Smith, I mean, I kind of alluded to it earlier, has so much responsibility with this scheme. I mean, the Bears, because again, they like Danny Trevathan is on injured reserve. He's been designated to return, and Alec Ogletree is a shell of whatever he once was. They have 3 safeties off and on the field, and Roquan has that like middle third essentially to himself in their zone defense and their match coverage defense. They can't afford to put him on an island with someone where he might lose anyway. I mean, TJ Hawkins is a very good tight end. And DeAndre Swift could help have him vacate the field, and then someone else makes a play. I will say that I like how Desai is creative in his deployment, in that I would anticipate at least one of those lines, either of those 2 lines being a non-threat. I mean, Roquan Smith will make sure one of them is a non-threat. That's how good he's been through those 3 games, just a complete non-threat at all. He's too smart of a player. He's too instinctive of a player. You guys know me. I'm not someone that really readily gushes about the Bears, especially of the late, but Roquan Smith is too good to not take away one of those guys if that ultimately ends up being his responsibility.
I have one last question about the Bears defense, and how's Christian Jones looked?
He's even played. I think he's had like a few snaps here and there.
Just wanted to check up on ex-Lions linebackers who received contract extensions.
I mean, I think he was a Bear first, so to be fair.
It's true.
Oh, so we can call him NFC North legend.
NFC North legend Christian Jones, yes.
I mean, there are a lot of kind of interesting, not a lot of interesting, but there's 3, I would say, pretty maligned Lions players currently on the Bears roster or their practice squad.
Okay, yeah, you had to bring out the practice squad to
because
really
Tabor,
get down there.
Is there? I guess this is my question. Is there any chance Tease Tabor gets elevated this week?
Goodness no.
Dang it. Okay. Jesse James. I know we already talked about the offense, but he looked kind of good in the preseason. Like, he had a couple touchdowns, I think, in the preseason. Is he a potential threat this week?
I kind of said this earlier when we were talking about the offense. I don't know how to evaluate anybody that is a skill position player on their offense, just because considering just like, Jimmy Graham gets like 2 end zone fades a game and then doesn't do it and then doesn't play at all. Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney run short curls and then don't play at all. But I think this was the game where they wanted to establish more of a running game. Cole Kmet is obviously the starter, but if you want to go double tight, if you want to go with that ace kind of formation, I think it would be pretty easy to assume that Jesse James gets a better chunk of playing time than he has so far. They're not going to put Jimmy Graham on an island blocking. I mean, Matt Nagy might. So I should say I wouldn't put Jimmy Graham on an island blocking. Matt Nagy might, but if they're going to go with that run-centric game plan, then yes, Jesse James should play a ton.
And lastly, why Brashad Perryman?
I forgot about him too.
Oh God, Brashad Perryman too. I mean,
you
tell me, man.
Right? Like, he hasn't.
You
even
tell me. I know as much. Like he has not even been active yet.
I have one more serious question about the Bears defense, and that I want to go back to last week, and maybe last week's just an anomaly that you throw out the window completely, but they gave up 215 rushing yards and 5.1 per carry against the Browns. Is that run defense a little more vulnerable this year, maybe because of some of the aging guys on that front seven?
I think so. I think you can definitely push the Bears around a little bit more than you have in the past. I mean, Eddie Goldman hasn't been played yet, and that's someone that they base the defense on. That's someone that's their nose tackle that eats space, that takes up two offensive linemen every play. But even so, I think they've been fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Browns' case especially was more of, okay, they've been on the field for 2/3 of the game, and eventually the superior talented team with the great offensive line is just going to start bullying them, and they're exhausted, and let's all go home. I think that was more of that case. I think the Browns probably would have still had something like in a normal confine where they had a supporting, where the Bears had a supporting offense. The Browns still probably would have had a decent game overall as a team rushing, but that has to be put into context.
Fair enough. All right, let's close out our podcast as we always do with our prediction segment, which we call the one thing we think we know, where we give a prediction of what we think is going to happen. Not necessarily a score prediction, not necessarily a prediction of who wins, but a prediction of one aspect of the game in which we're sure is going to happen. And as always, I'm going to give the floor to Ryan first. Ryan, what is the one thing you think you know about Week 4, Lions vs. Bears?
The one thing I think I know about Week 4, the Detroit Lions heading into Soldier Field to play the Chicago Bears, potentially for the last time.
They're not moving for at least 5 or 6 years. But
who knows at this point? Who knows at this point?
It's impossible to know.
It's impossible to know.
What is Bane going to blow up Soldier Field at halftime or something?
Bane isn't, but Dan Campbell's coming. And the one thing I think I know is that the Detroit Lions are going to pick up their first win of the Dan Campbell era.
Ooh, doing a rare win-loss prediction here on First Bite. Love to see it.
Well, I was doing awful at the rest of my predictions, so I'm just going to go win-loss.
I wasn't going to bring up the fact that I said TJ Hawkinson was going to set a career day last week, and he got 2 catches for 10 yards or whatever it was.
Yes.
Rob, we'll let you go next. What is the one thing you think you know about Lions Bears?
The one thing I think I know about Bears Lions at Soldier Field is that Matt Nagy is going to Matt Nagy is going to do something that pisses off the entire northeast quarter of Illinois.
That might be the safest prediction we've heard all season.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bold. I don't know. You see where things go. You see where things go.
That one nice thing to say about Matt Nagy all podcast. He's probably good. He's probably going to piss people off. No, that's bold.
He could get the coin toss wrong at, I know actually it's the way team that has a coin toss, but if he got the coin toss wrong, people would hate him for it.
Oh yeah, I'm saying that at this point, like where it's red meat, where he could open his mouth and people are cussing at him to just immediately shut up. We're at that point, so.
All right, the one thing I think I know, and I'm going to steal a page out of Ryan's book here and go with some odds here. The over-under for this game is currently set at 42 points. It's pretty low over-under. I'm still taking the under. This is going to be an extremely low-scoring game. Both offensives have struggled. I think Lions are going to struggle to score against this Bears defense, and I think both teams are going to try to run the ball like hell, which means limited possessions, limited opportunities to score. Under 42 in this game.
Wait, under 42?
Yep.
I feel like 30, even under 32 would be safer. The Bears offense, sincerely.
I was going to push you a little bit further, Jeremy. I want to know, what does the team that wins this football game, what do they score? The first team to what wins this game?
I think 20. I think 20. I don't know if a team gets to 20, but I think if a team gets to 20, they win. My only concern with this is we know the Bears. The Bears win games by scoring defensive touchdowns. They already have one this season with that Roquan Smith pick six, and defensive scores can really break an over under. But I'm still going to stick with the under here.
Love it.
Safe.
Ryan saying he loves it. I feel good about it. All right, that'll do it for First Bite this week. We want to thank you, Robert. Wow. Ryan and Robert. I want to thank you both, Ryan and Robert, for joining us. Robert, I want to give you the floor too here really quick to let people know where they can find you, what's going on over there at Windy City Gridiron, anything the Lions fans might be interested in.
You can find my snark if you like Schadenfreude. I think I've definitely leaned far more into that than recent years on Windy City Gridiron. So you look at my byline, I am definitely making fun of the Bears 99% of the time at this point. That's what's warranted. So find me there at WCG. If you've enjoyed it in the past, I think I had a meltdown in this podcast a few years ago. Find that in writing.
Maybe we'll bring you on post game just for fun. We kind of did that last week with our good friend from Baltimore Beatdown, but that wasn't as fun for us as it might be bringing you aboard.
66 yards field goal, that wasn't fun. That doinked in.
That'll do it for the show. You would know all about doinks, wouldn't you? Thanks for joining us.
Well, I will say, as you close it out, it's fun for me to finally admit that Matthew Stafford is good now that he's left Detroit. So,
shut it down. Jeremy, shut it down.
It's over. Thanks for joining us, everybody. It's Chaos. Be kind.